Hey there, it's me, Lottie, and today we are going to talk about an herbalism book that I had the wonderful opportunity to read called Folk Wisdom and Mother Wit, John Lee, an African American Herbal Healer. Today we're going to be checking out this book that I learned about on Facebook. I saw a post by Juliet Blankenspore on her page called The Healing Garden. She works with the Chestnut School of Herbal Medicine, and it talked a little bit about his background and had a great photograph of him. And she had gotten her information from the Folk Healers page on Instagram, which is an awesome resource. If you haven't checked it out, you should. But I got so curious about this book that I decided to look it up. And let me tell you, this is not an easy book to come by, okay? I was lucky to be able to, I ordered it through my library's loan department, and I was able to obtain a copy that I could read. The copies that are online go for anywhere between like $85 would be a bargain, because it's usually between $85 and $105 on different sources. Will I ever own it? I don't know. But I could keep my eyes open. Maybe I'd come across it in a used bookstore. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about this book. One thing I liked about this book is that it's relatively a simple book. It is divided into an introduction, which only has 4 chapters, which is a historic overview of African American folk medicine. Chapter 2, Becoming an Herbalist. Chapter 3, Diagnostic System. Now, John Lee has his own diagnostic system that he used, and classifications of the materia medica and illustrations. And then the herbal repertoire, which, involves the pictures and the names and uses of the herbs that he most frequently used. This book really excited me around what was called ethnobotany, and it really piqued my interest as to what ethnobotany is. So ethnobotany is the study of how people of a particular culture and region make use of the indigenous or native plants. And that can include food, medicine, shelter, dye, fibers, oils, resins, gums, soaps, waxes, etc. That was really interesting to me. I mean, that may need to be something that I go back to school and pursue, because I'm really interested in the way our culture uses medicines. So again, it's a pretty simple and straightforward book. There were a few tabby things where I marked things that I wanted to remember. For example, the focus of this project, addressed the question of why the use of folk medicine persists. Given the fact that modern medicine is widely available, it may be surprising that folk medicine is still pervasive. The primary objectives of the initial research were to explore the validity and parameters of the African American folk medical system, to find and to identify types of practitioners such as herbalists, root doctors, and midwives in popular health care, to interview practitioners and learn about their philosophy and motivation and their individual systems of diagnosis and treatment, and to compile information about folk materia medica, to collect samples of herbs, both cultivated and wild. So this book is part of an ongoing study of folk medicine and popular health care, particularly in the southeast lowlands of Virginia, the Carolinas, and Georgia, which was begun in 1978. Now, this book was written or published in 1993. So that's another thing that has me interested, is where the rest of this study is, because it's just so rich in so much information. Another thing that the research in this book shows is that the African American folk medical system continues to be a vital part of healthcare delivery. This quote here: "The widespread development and persistence of traditional medicine among Afro-Americans and their corresponding underutilization of modern medical practices and practitioners are largely traceable to the economic poverty of the Black masses and the social history of racial discrimination and oppression that has assured perpetuation of their poverty, ignorance, and poor health." Right? Yes. So let's talk a little bit about Mr. Lee. So there's a lot about his background. Mr. Lee was the most highly trained and experienced practitioner interviewed during the initial field work. He was generous with his time and information, and he is part of the traditional African American folk medical system. He uses elements of biomedicine, adapting them to the frame of reference of the older traditions. So again, it's a small book. Like, it's relatively small. I mean, over, let's see, I would say that over, or almost half. Yeah, see, over half. This is all the materia medica here. So this is just the small amount that's about Mr. Lee, the way he practiced, the way he learned, which he learned from his mother, Eliza Jane Seymour, which happens to be one of my great-grandmother's great-great-grandmother's names. I don't know. It had me looking, though. He was from Moncure, North Carolina. His early learning began with helping his mother, Eliza Jane Seymour, a midwife, when he was a child. Her knowledge drew on traditions from her mixed American Indian, Irish, British, and African descent. Seems like his father also had some healing practices that he used that seemed to be more on a metaphysical or spiritual level. And it does mention in the book that his wife also helped him in his work, but interestingly, not at first. His wife didn't start helping him until he helped her cure herself of a bad bout of poison ivy, because prior to that, she didn't believe in those plant medicines and those old-timey things. So I thought that was really interesting. Mr. Lee had his own diagnostic system that reminds me of what I learned about in European medical herbal medicine systems about the humors, the 4 fluids of the body that were said to be indicators of illness, and that was what you use to assess diagnosing what kinds of herbs folks needed. He used terms which I know I've heard like referenced in more Southern references to health, and like older people saying things such as slow blood or fast blood or tired blood or low blood or high blood or bad blood. So a lot of his classifications had to do with blood. Also phlegm, and he also mentions the gallbladder, which would be the production of bile. Hey, this is Editing Lottie of the Future. I wanted to say he also used dreams, the moon, and had flashes of insight to help with diagnoses. This really reminded me of how Harriet Tubman worked. But it goes through briefly his classification system of blood purity, blood quantity, blood circulation, and blood temperature, and how these different things being out of balance contribute to diseases such as high blood pressure, diabetes, poor circulation, the ability to heal from wounds, those kinds of things. Then lastly, we have the materia medica. Mr. Lee used a classification system around the herbs that went by taste, reaction, whether it was active or strong, medium or mild, powerful. So that's how he went about classifying the plants that he worked with, which is pretty straightforward. It has the scientific name for the plant, the local name, how Lee classified it, the uses for it. But what's interesting is then it goes to the active ingredients, which I think were added by other researchers. And that's interesting because, as you can see, there's an illustration, and then like I described, but then it goes right into very clinical terms, which is interesting. Usually most books will say, it might say it's a diaphoretic, it increases circulation, it's a carminative to release gas, it'll say sort of the ways, like it says what it's used for, but a lot of times the materia medica will go on to describe how it helps those situations. In this case, you get a list of carvacol, thymol, linalool, linolene acetate, limonene, osamine, alpha-pinene, camphene. I'm like, I don't know what those are. So I'm not sure that that's the most helpful way to do the materia medica. Although you can easily find, you could look up the plant and its uses and fill in the gaps that you needed. The illustrations are simple but effective. I think that they were very accurate. I could tell what I was looking at. The illustrations were done by someone else. Linda Kempton Armstrong. And the only thing I will say, however, is I noticed one misclassification, which I only know this because I happened to do a video about something that directly mentioned this. So it's around sarsaparilla, which is mentioned a lot in this book. Sarsaparilla and black cohosh. Those were the things, man. Those were really used a lot. But I want to find that page.
Where is the sarsaparilla page?
Okay, I found it. Finally found it. All right, so this page here that has a picture that's labeled sarsaparilla, but the Latin name here, Menispermum canadense, is a different plant. That is a different plant altogether. This picture does look like sarsaparilla. The berries would be red, I believe. And it is more common in the South, I think, for this to be used as medicine. But the Latin name that's indicated there and next to here, it says moonseed. Moonseed is a different plant than sarsaparilla. And let me just see. Yeah, so this sarsaparilla is in what's called the Simlax family, not the Menispermaceae family. Getting a little technical here, aren't we? But it's important. So I'm not sure what happened there. I think maybe the researchers made a mistake in labeling this one. When John Lee was talking about sarsaparilla, he probably was not talking about Menispermum canadense, but more so the Simlax species, family, I believe. That's why we have to read a whole lot of different sources, right? So that we know stuff, so that we learn stuff. The other thing I felt was very interesting that I'm excited to learn more about is his use of nightshade. Solanum nigrum, black nightshade. And this is that plant. This is a plant that is common, like in my backyard. And it has these little white flowers at one point in time. Then it has these dark, almost black berries. And I see them a lot. And at first I was always like, oh, I want to use this for something. And it would always be like, oh, that's nightshade. That is black nightshade. No, 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 no. So I was really surprised when I was reading this. And I found that he uses it, or used it. He used to use it for poison ivy. This, in fact, was the treatment that he gave his wife for poison ivy that she got all over the backs of her legs when she went fishing and was sitting down by the water and sat in a patch of poison ivy. And it says here that nightshade is used for poison ivy, insect bites, bee or wasp stings, and rashes. And that it is a powerful, active, strong herb. And I believe that would indicate this is for external use only. I would like to do more research around this, but I was like, oh, okay, I had not heard of that before. So I really enjoyed this book. And if I could own it, I would. I think that it is an incredibly valuable contribution to the genre of herbal writing and herbal history, especially as it relates to that of North America and our history and ethnobotany. So I'm really appreciative that this book exists. Hopefully I can save up my pennies and maybe get myself a copy one day. So that is, I gave this book 5 stars. I think I gave this book 4 or 5 stars on Goodreads because I really think it is a valuable contribution to the genre. It's very interesting. It really set the tone for me to discover a lot more. There were a lot in the back of the book. The references. The reference list is very long with lots more books and studies. And so that was really, so I think I could utilize this book as a springboard to go learn a lot more stuff. They also talked about a few other ways that medicines were used that were non-herbal, such as cobwebs, eggshell linings, hen house droppings, earwax, soot. Hey, you know? Anyway, thank you so much for spending some time with me to check out this book featuring John Lee, an African-American herbal healer. It's by Arvilla Payne Johnson and John Lee, Folk Wisdom and Mother Wit. So I'm going to end here. And I hope that you're doing well and taking really good care of yourself. I hope to see you in the next video. And until then,